Well, very kind of you to accompany us in this session. Since it's a work session, we're gonna try to make a very simple protocol. Thank you very much to all the attendees that are here with us, that are honoring with your presence. This is an event that is possible thanks to the support of sponsorship of the Lima Marsh, which have facilitated the visit of David Nadler, which you know that is Vice Chairman of Marsh International, the worldwide famous company which has the largest share in the world. We feel very, very honored with Mr. Nadler's presence. He came with Mr. Alex Musaski, which is responsible for all of Marsh's operations in the world, who's lived in Colombia, so he feels very much at home when he comes to Colombia. With the conversations we had yesterday and this morning. This is a simple event. We're going to first have a conference from Mr. Nadler, an hour and a half, an hour 15. We're going to make a brief break, 15 minutes. Then we have a panel. It's a luxury panel. We have people from academia, Carlos Felipe Londono, which is going to give us the vision and the expectations on corporate governance. And David Bojanini, who doesn't need a presentation or introduction. And Sergio Restrepo, which is known by all, ex-president of IFI, president of the board of directors of Cerromatoso, which is Billington, an investment company with worldwide presence. And also was a member of the board of directors of Uniwan, the biggest banana company.
When I talk about board building, so three concepts: boards as teams, the degree of engagement, and building on that, the idea of board building. These are the steps that we believe can help boards to improve themselves and maintain their effectiveness. Just as a note, there's an association of directors in the U.S., which is called the National Association of Corporate Directors. And in the midst of the crisis, they put out a set of principles that they saw as critical for governance, and they parallel this quite a bit, that board has a responsibility for governance, that governance should be transparent, that directors have to be competent and committed, that boards have accountability, that there should be independent board leadership, that integrity, ethics, and responsibility are part of what the board should be looking at, that the board should pay attention to information, the agenda and strategy, that the board ought to make sure it's not too entrenched, that the same people aren't there for decades, that shareholders have input in this selection of directors, and finally that boards communicate with shareholders. I just give that as another perspective. It's very consistent. It's the kind of thing that's being communicated to boards in the United States. So let me end by talking about what I think are some of the emerging issues in 2010 and 2011. One of the big ones is risk. I'm biased. I participated in this Blue Ribbon Commission to look at risk. But one of the big issues that's been raised is, how does the board play a better role in understanding risk for the company, enterprise risk, and ensuring that the company does not take unwarranted, unmanaged risk? And that's a big issue in boards today. There are new requirements that occurred because of all the financial failures, so there are new requirements on disclosure. Again, we can talk about this. I think some of that's probably gone a bit too far. And in fact, there's a concern that there are so many requirements on boards now that we may have made boards more short-term than they're supposed to be. This is a piece by the Aspen Institute that involved a broad number of people that said there was a probable threat from too much short-termism. If you look at one of the recent board surveys, these come out all the time. If you look at this, it says these are directors saying what should be on your agenda. Number 1, corporate strategy. Number 2, risk management. Number 3, succession planning. Number 4, executive compensation. Number 5, shareholder communication. 6 is compliance. And then 7th is directors. So this gives you a sense of the issues that are on the minds of directors of major companies in the U.S. The boards I've seen do this well. The management has taken the initiative to engage the board in the process of strategic thinking. We write about it in the book. There's a difference between strategic planning and execution, but big strategic thinking and strategic decision making, like what businesses are we going to be in, what markets are we going to be in, how are we going to compete, how will we win, how do we create value. And I've seen examples of where one I think we write about in the book, over 9 months we engaged the board in their views of the environment, their views of the strengths and weaknesses of the company, their views when we developed the alternatives of what different alternatives might be chosen by the company. I think the essence of participation is choice, that is having more than a yes or no, but the ability to look at alternate paths of action and to be able to talk about the advantages, the risks, the opportunities. I think when boards, most boards, when you survey them, say the thing we could help on most is strategy, and the thing that we're most dissatisfied with is we're not involved in strategy. Boards don't usually want to run operations. They know they're not very competent to do that. Okay? That's the job of management. But they could be much more engaged in strategy. And I think the advantage of that is that the board being more engaged has a shared understanding of what the management's trying to do. And because of that, can actually support management much more effectively over time.
I would ask David what has done the internationalization group in this 10 years. In Suramericana is outside. 10 years ago, they started to think strategically. There must have been discussions in those boards in the Antioquia group that said this market is too small. Something must have happened in those boards in the creation of these new companies, these international companies that you have today. Could you tell us a little bit, how do you manage this strategic dimension in your board? Yes, yes. What David is mentioning here precisely has to do with the discussion of the boards. The discussion of the strategy in the board's sessions is important, because at the beginning we used to think that a board, before we used to, it was a meeting to give a report, for those accountable to we give reports and present reports, show the results of the different businesses and to discuss them. But also the board of directors, the board likes the strategy itself, and to have debates, discussions, open discussions and broad discussions on strategy. In case of many of the companies in this group, what we started to see when we decided to focus the activities of the different companies, we realized that companies, most of them were leaders in their sectors, in their industries in Colombia, and to think in growing more in Colombia, well, was very difficult, giving the anti-monopolistic laws, etc., antitrust laws, etc. So we defined some strategies, important strategies, when we focused these companies, and this was the decisions made in board of directors. This was an issue brought to the board, was discussed at the board and approved at the board, and there all this expansion process began.